The light was dim in the small room where Paul Walker spent his last moments. The hum of the car engines had long faded away, replaced by an eerie silence. It was the kind of quiet that lingers when something monumental is about to happen. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. His once vibrant face, now pale with illness, seemed almost peaceful. Yet there was something in the air, something that hinted at a secret he had carried with him, something no one else knew until the very end. At 40, Paul Walker was just entering the prime of his life, and yet his final moments were marked by a profound quietness. As he sat alone in that room, his thoughts seemed to drift between the past and what was yet to come. The crash, the final moments of his life were unexpected, but it was the things left unsaid, the conversations that never happened, that would haunt his loved ones forever. In those final days, something shifted inside Paul, and it was in those moments that he shared with the people closest to him that the true story of his last days would be revealed. But what Paul whispered to his close friend in those final moments left the world in a state of stunned silence. It was a truth that no one saw coming, a truth that would change the way the world remembered him. Before we go further, make sure to subscribe and join us as we explore these untold stories, ones that remind us how fragile life really is. To understand why Paul Walker became the man we admired, we must go back to where it all began. His childhood wasn't marked by the bright lights of Hollywood or the allure of fame. It was a quiet existence, filled with humble beginnings that set the stage for the man he would later become. Born in 1973 in the sleepy town of Glendale, California, Paul Walker's early life was far removed from the glitz and glamour of the entertainment industry. Raised by a father who was a successful fashion model and a mother who was a talented photographer, Paul's childhood was spent in the shadow of creative yet modest lives. There were no Hollywood parties or grandiose homes, just a family trying to make their way in the world. His father, a man of few words but with an undeniable strength, instilled in Paul a deep sense of responsibility and discipline. His mother, on the other hand, encouraged his artistic side, making sure he knew how to capture moments on film and appreciate the beauty in the world. But beneath the quiet streets of California, there was a growing tension, a sense of longing for something more, something bigger. Paul's heart was always restless, a feeling that would later push him towards his destiny. But growing up wasn't always easy. There were moments of loneliness, of wanting to break free from the constraints of a small-town life. These feelings would later fuel his desire for adventure and the need to connect with people on a deeper level. They would also push him into the dangerous world of stardom, where the struggle between fame and family would become ever more intense. And yet it was in these early years, in the middle of the quiet streets and sunny California days, that the foundation of Paul Walker's character was built. His ambition, his kindness, and his drive were all shaped by the lessons he learned as a child. But little did he know, the world he was about to enter would push him to the brink. Fame, fortune, and the pressures of Hollywood would soon take their toll, leaving him with a burden he couldn't escape. The road to stardom was not always smooth, but for Paul Walker, it was a path destined to change his life forever. As a young man, he found himself caught in the whirlwind of Hollywood's spotlight, a place where dreams are made, but sometimes those dreams come at a cost. Paul's journey into the world of acting was far from typical. While his good looks and charisma certainly helped, it was his dedication and authenticity that truly set him apart. He first caught the public's attention with his role in the 1999 hit movie Varsity Blues. It was a film that launched his career, opening the doors to the kind of fame most people only dream of. But it was the Fast and Furious franchise that truly turned Paul into a household name. The Fast and Furious films were more than just movies. They were a cultural phenomenon. As Brian O'Connor, Paul embodied the perfect balance of strength, vulnerability, and loyalty. His connection with the fans was immediate, and his popularity soared. Paul had become one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood. And yet, even in the midst of his success, something was missing. Behind the scenes, the pressures of fame began to weigh heavily on him. The long hours on set, the constant media attention, and the endless demands of his career left little room for anything else. Paul was no longer just the charming, carefree guy on screen. The cost of his success was beginning to show. In the midst of the spotlight, he also faced personal struggles that were far less glamorous. The isolation of being constantly in front of cameras, the feeling of being misunderstood, and the tension between his work and his private life, all of these took a toll. But Paul soldiered on, always putting on a brave face for the public. Yet despite the fame and the acclaim, Paul never lost sight of the things that truly mattered to him: family, nature, and helping others. His charity work, especially with his organization Reach Out Worldwide, showed another side to him, one that was deeply compassionate and driven by a desire to make the world a better place. This was the Paul Walker many never saw, the one whose heart beat not for fame, but for the well-being of others. But as the years passed, the exhaustion from the constant grind of Hollywood fame began to catch up with him. It was only a matter of time before the next chapter of his story would unfold, and with it, the great tragedy that would change everything. The lights of Hollywood may have shone brightly, but in the silence of his private moments, Paul Walker was fighting a different kind of battle. Fame and fortune could not shield him from the inevitable struggles that awaited. And though the world saw the actor at his best behind closed doors, Paul was confronting something far more difficult. The years leading up to Paul's death were marked by a quiet turmoil. While his career continued to flourish, his personal life took a turn. Despite his ongoing commitment to charity work and his love for adventure, Paul had begun to experience the pressure and strain that fame so often brings. His mind, though sharp and dedicated, was weighed down by the burdens of a life lived under the public's scrutiny. Paul's love for speed was no secret. He had an undeniable connection to cars, often spending his off time racing and enjoying the thrill of high-speed driving. But as his life became more hectic, the weight of his success began to show in ways he couldn't ignore. The strain of balancing fame with his personal passions took its toll on his emotional health, and though he maintained a strong, confident facade, those closest to him could see the cracks forming. Despite his outward strength, Paul struggled with the feeling of being trapped in a world that often demanded more than he could give. His battles with loneliness, the fear of losing his identity in the midst of his fame, and the relentless pace of his work were slowly eating away at him. But what was even more tragic was his constant drive to push through, never fully addressing the toll it was taking on him emotionally. In 2013, Paul Walker's life was forever altered in a way no one could have expected. It wasn't just the tragic car accident that would define his final days. It was also the deep emotional and physical strain he had carried with him for years. Those around him, especially his close friends and family, knew something had shifted within him. He had grown quieter, more introspective. He had become a man in search of peace, but his time would run out far too soon. The final weeks of Paul Walker's life were filled with a haunting sense of finality, yet they were also filled with moments of quiet reflection. Days before his tragic accident, he found himself in a place that most of us only reach after much soul-searching, at peace with himself, his life, and the path he had walked. It was in those final days, as Paul prepared for a charity event with his beloved organization, Reach Out Worldwide, that he began to speak more openly about his hopes for the future. Those closest to him, his family, friends, and colleagues, remarked how he seemed more grounded, more reflective, almost as if he were anticipating a change. There was an air of serenity around him, a quiet acceptance that this chapter of his life was about to close. On November 30th, 2013, Paul was attending a charity event in Santa Clarita, California. The atmosphere was one of excitement and joy as he greeted friends and fans, unaware that this would be the last time he would ever speak to them. As the day came to an end, Paul and his friend Roger Rodas decided to take a quick drive in the Porsche Carrera GT, a car that had become synonymous with both Paul's love for speed and his tragic death. Just moments before the fateful crash that would take his life, Paul shared a brief moment of camaraderie with those around him. It's been reported that he spoke about his excitement for the future and the charity work he hoped to expand. But more than that, he spoke with a sense of calm, a man who knew that he had done what he could and had found peace in his purpose. Those who knew him described him as a man with a profound sense of responsibility. yet with the weight of the world's expectations lifting from his shoulders in his final days. And then there was the last moment, the final conversation shared with his friend and business partner, Roger Rodas. In that brief exchange, Paul left behind a message that would become etched in the memories of those closest to him. It was not a message of regret, but one of understanding, a quiet acknowledgement that life is fleeting, and that perhaps the greatest legacy one can leave is the love and kindness they shared with others. Paul's final words, while not publicly revealed, are believed to have been filled with gratitude and humility. In the stillness of those final moments, he spoke not of the fame or the glory, but of the people who had made his life meaningful. And then, as the world outside rushed on, Paul Walker's life came to an abrupt and tragic end. As the sun set on that fateful day, the world lost not only a beloved actor, but a man who had given his life to causes far greater than his own fame. When Paul Walker passed away, the world lost more than just an actor. We lost a man who had become a symbol of kindness, adventure, and a deep sense of responsibility. Though his life was cut tragically short, his legacy continues to inspire and impact those who knew him, and even those who never had the chance to meet him. Paul's legacy is perhaps best embodied in the work he did outside the limelight. While his role in the Fast and the Furious series made him a household name, it was his work with Reach Out Worldwide that truly defined who he was as a person. His passion for disaster relief, helping those affected by tragedies and natural disasters, showcased the depths of his character. He wasn't just an actor, he was a humanitarian, someone who used his fame to create real change in the world. After his death, Reach Out Worldwide received an outpouring of support, with donations flooding in from fans and organizations alike. Paul's mission to help those in need continues, and his vision lives on through the foundation he founded. His legacy is one of giving back, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place, no matter how big or small the gesture. In the wake of his passing, Paul Walker's family and friends have often spoken of his character. His daughter Meadow carries forward his memory, not just as the father she adored, but as the man who touched countless lives. His friends, including Fast and Furious co-stars, often speak of Paul's generosity and his unwavering loyalty to the people he loved. He was not just a star on screen, he was a star in their lives. A man who quietly made a difference without ever seeking the recognition that came with it. The impact of his death also left a lasting imprint on Hollywood. Paul's friends, family, and fans continue to honor him by carrying forward the messages he believed in: compassion, adventure, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. The Fast and Furious series itself became a tribute to him, with the now iconic For Paul tribute in Furious 7, marking the end of his character's journey and the bittersweet farewell to an actor who had become more than just a friend on set. He had become family. As his legacy lives on, Paul Walker's story reminds us that even in the face of death, it's the love we leave behind and the lives we touch that truly define us. His films may still be watched by millions around the world, but it's his contributions to the world outside of Hollywood that will forever mark him as more than just a movie star. When the lights of the big screen fade away, we're left with one fundamental question: what do we leave behind? Paul Walker left behind a message of love, kindness, and the importance of living each day with purpose. His final moments may have been cut short, but his impact is everlasting. As we remember Paul, we're reminded that the true measure of a life is not found in the roles we play on screen or the awards we collect, but in the lives we touch and the good we do in the world. So, what does one leave behind when the spotlight fades? And who will remember the final words we speak, the truths we carry, and the legacy we leave behind? If you believe in the power of kindness, in leaving a legacy of love, leave a heart in the comments below to honor Paul Walker's memory.